Hey everybody, welcome back to J&D Homestead. I thought today I would take you on probably the final summer garden tour here on the property. We're starting to get kind of varying temperatures, and a lot of our summer plants are starting to you can see the signs of them starting to be finished for the season. So we're looking at starting to turn things over for more of a fall garden. This will be our first go at a fall winter garden. We'll see how it goes. As far as our winters are very unpredictable here, we don't ever know what we're gonna get. So I thought I'd bring you on the final summer garden tour before things start to fully finish for the season. I'm gonna take us down here and start. We are growing as many weeds as we are produce, so just trying to maintain it as best as possible. But despite the cow loving strawberry leaves, our strawberries have recovered lovely. They're starting to send out runners. These ones are the these are the everbearing. So I'm hoping this fall, as soon as the temperatures start to dwindle and to drop cooler consistently during the day, that we'll start seeing some blooms on these beauties and get some fresh fall strawberries. Our next row starts with beautiful marigolds and then this spectacular huge weed. But it is some of the peppers. We're getting quite a few sugar rush peppers on here. I actually just ordered some peaches, so I want to try those in some peach salsa and see how those turn out. But we have tons of blooms and buds on those. And then my Redgar tomatoes are, I know that they're probably not the biggest ever somebody's grown, but for me, these are some of the prettiest slicing tomatoes that I've ever been able to raise on this property. So for me, this is so exciting, knowing that these guys were itty bitty when I planted them, pretty much half dead, and now they're putting out beautiful, beautiful fruit. I'm very, very excited. But all down this row, you can see weeds, and you can see tomatoes. Some issues on some of the tomatoes, but I mean, overall, they're looking very, very lovely. The plants still look very healthy and blooms on them still. So I'm very excited to see how these continue on for the next couple of weeks. And then we get down here to our cayenne peppers, and they are putting on an abundance. And what I'm hoping will happen is, where we don't do a ton of spicy food, I'm hoping that we'll get enough off of these plants where I don't need to grow hot peppers next year. I can put these up either in pickled or powder and not have to grow any. And then my jalapenos are doing great. I've had a couple of these. They're actually a really pleasant spice. They're not so spicy that I can't stand them. But I'm really enjoying balancing these out with the jalapenos and the salsas that I've made. And we're getting a lot down here. So same thing with these. I may harvest them and then preserve them in multiple ways so that we can utilize them again next year. We'll see. And then lovely marigolds and a weed. This next section is overcome with weeds and is starting to be prepped to turn. These are in amongst the weeds, strawberry plants, and I believe that these are the rest of those everbearing. So hopefully, again, once it cools off, we'll get berries off of that. And then we went ahead and tarped this. This was just immensely overcome by weeds. We weeded it and you couldn't even really tell, so I went ahead and just covered it and started prepping that. I think down here in this row we'll probably leave dormant, because while we do have like 3 beans down here that germinated, the sweet potatoes in the next row over are really starting to vine, and I don't really want to interrupt their vining to plant spring crops or fall crops, I'm sorry, in this row here. So I'm torn. I'm gonna let these beans flower for a little bit, but then I will probably just go ahead and cover this whole section here down this row and let the sweet potatoes just vine over for the next month and a half until our first frost. But I'm very excited. While the weeds are very prolific in these rows, you can also see that the sweet potatoes are really starting to vine and to take over, which is wonderful. So hopefully we'll see how our sweet potato crop does this year, which I'm really excited about. Nathan absolutely loves sweet potatoes, and the kids do, the older kids do too. So the more sweet potatoes we can get, the better, because I can cure them, they will store well, and my kids and husband enjoy them as well as me. On this trellis, on this far side, we have cucumbers, and they're still going. You can see they're getting a little bit of maybe a disease or overwatered issues, but you can see the vines are still growing really strongly. But when I noticed that these were starting to kind of peter out a little bit, I went ahead and planted a second planting here of cucumbers. And so hopefully those will start taking off really well. You can see they're already starting to vine up the cattle panel on this side, which is really awesome. And then on down here, I started weeding these strawberries, and so you can see they're kind of starting to pop through, but on down here you can see that due to just trying to maintain sanity and our farmhand going back to school and Tim's job getting busy, the weeds have just started taking over the garden. So, you know, when your kids take priority, sometimes things get left behind. And so for us right now, certain parts of the garden are very weeded because of that. I'm hoping to get over to them before we lose the strawberries, but we'll get there. On past the cattle panel here, you will see again a plethora of weeds, but we also do have some sweet potato vines that are doing fairly well in this row here as well. And so hopefully we'll get a handful of sweet potatoes out of this row. Now, the next row over is green beans, and they're doing very well. Lots of blooms on them, and you can even see here we have the start of a little bean. So this will be a batch of beans, depending on if we have other things growing or not. That will probably be fresh eating, but we may get enough to potentially can as well. This next row is very unimpressive. I have had very little success with carrots. I've only grown them a couple of times, and both times were not very successful. So this year I was like, you know what? It's early enough. I have this whole row here. Let's try some carrots. And I think I have some germination on down. I planted two different varieties of carrots. I planted just like the short snack size carrots. They have a faster production rate than some of the longer carrots. Plus this bed is not very deep, and so I didn't want to plant really long carrots with the realization that they probably wouldn't grow to their full potential, or they wouldn't grow as straight as possible. So we're trying that in those. I'm hoping that next year, since we should have enough compost to not have to till this under, and we can just add to these rows, that we'll actually have success with spring carrots. But again, you live, you learn, you try. And so I wanted to try something in this row. I had the time, and so we're going to do it. The next two rows are my last planting of beans. I'm cutting these ones close, these two rows close, because I planted them with roughly 65 days until our last frost. And these take about 55 days to start producing. So if we get an early frost, it's probably nip me in the bud. But if we have a later frost, then hopefully we'll get quite a bit off of this. And the germination rate on these was fairly good. The places where it didn't germinate, I think I over mulched, and so they're just slow coming through or unsuccessful in coming through. At the top of this second bean row, so you see beans here, this is all those volunteer tomatoes, and we've gotten quite a few off of them. There's some Romas in here that are starting to yellow, and so hopefully, as long as the chickens stay out of here, we'll get some Romas off of that. But that leads me to our next row, which is peppers and tomatoes. I am super thrilled with my pepper plants. Again, I don't try to compare my garden to other people's gardens, because I know other people have more experience. Their gardens are more nutrient filled in the dirt. They have more hacks and tricks up their sleeves. But for me, aside, like I think I've mentioned in the past, aside from jalapenos and banana peppers, I have had very little success growing, specifically bell peppers. And this year I've already harvested, which I know for some may not be enough, but for me it's a lot, is 6 bell peppers, which has been awesome because I've been able to use my own peppers in my salsas and that's just been like super exciting for me. So that's a huge win. But I'm really happy. These are some of the bigger pepper plants, healthier pepper plants that I've ever had. This one down here is not super great, but I think it's kind of gotten bogged by the weeds. But I'm still getting tons of peppers coming on. I have blooms on a couple. And I think this heat has really, that we've had about the last week or so, has really helped these guys out. My basil has been beautiful. We've been able to use basil in a lot of our fresh cooking as well as in dehydrating. And then we have a plethora of cherry tomatoes. This one, they're getting very, very tall. We've had good clusters, like we've harvested off of all of these already, and then these two are starting to come on ripe. They're coming ripe in like a succession instead of all at once. So they look kind of sad, but you can see here, if I can get this. Where are you? There you are. They're just pretty. So pretty. My Roma tomato, the plants themselves did not get very big, but for the size, I was pretty pleased with the fruit. It's decent sized. They're relatively uniform. So I was pretty happy with them, and they've made some very, very tasty soup and salsa. And so I'm hoping that this week maybe we'll get a little bit of spaghetti sauce put up. But again, lots of cherry tomatoes. And then some more peppers down here. And you can see they're just so pretty. Oh, there's a good one. Hey. For orange pepper plants or yellow pepper plants, California Wonder, I don't remember which ones were which. So if I need a pepper plant, I pick one. If not, I'm just going to let them grow until I either see like some black discoloration or they start to turn a pretty color. So that's what I'm doing with these guys. But I'm very pleased with these pepper plants. Behind me is another row of beans. So waiting for those to start to produce. The Japanese beetles have kind of started eating at them. But it's that time of year where we have lots of pests. So I'm not going to be too cranky about it. I know some people would be like, no bugs in the garden, but we have a ton of wild birds, and I've had very little pest pressure as far as insects this year, and I think that's because of that. So I want to give them as much free food as possible. Down here on the end, aside from growing weeds, we do have some zucchinis that are starting to peter off, but you can see that they're still putting on fruit. We have had a lot of rain the last couple of days, and so those have really taken back off. I thought we were probably done because the squash bugs have started to find them. I gave the chickens a leaf the other day that had like 40 squash bugs on it, and they very much enjoyed it. So I thought we were going to be hitting squash bug season where we were going to start losing them, but they all have started to put on new buds and started to put on new fruit, which has been kind of a nice surprise for me. Because my kids and I found out we absolutely love zucchini noodles, and so where I'm having to do a lot of gluten-free stuff, it's an awesome alternative for us. Down here on the end, we do have our squash, and it's doing really, really well. And then we have these volunteer somethings, and they're thriving. I don't know if we have enough time in the season for them to put on any fruit, so I can figure out what they actually are. But I wanted to go ahead and let them grow here, in part because that's a row. I want to start this end row from the greenhouse all the way down the end of this garden, just as kind of like a final end. And so that's just kind of helping me create and encourage the dirt to grow more stuff for next year. All right, so we're getting to the end soon, but we've got lovely marigolds here. And then this one I'm actually really excited about. This is an eggplant. I have never grown eggplant. I had the sheep get into the garden a while ago, and they just ate this thing down dead. And so I wasn't convinced it would come back, but I've actually been able to harvest several eggplant off of this, which has been really, really exciting for me. The last time I ate eggplant was probably 10 years ago. And so this is the first time that I've had eggplant since then, and I was really excited about it. So on down this row is where my jalapenos are, as well as more tomatoes. And I'm really happy. These don't have any spice at all. I like to let them get a little bit fatter than that though, because then they actually start to develop the flavor of jalapenos, whereas when you harvest them small, they just really do kind of taste like green peppers, which Tim's not a huge fan of. He wants the jalapeno flavor. But those have been putting on a ton, and those have been super fun to combine with the jalapenos. On down, we've got basil and my tomatoes, which are doing wonderfully. These ones, I'm super thrilled with these Roma plants. They've grown up, they've gotten tall, they're putting on beautiful fruit that are lovely sizes all the way on down. My cherry tomatoes are doing great as well. And then on down we have through the forest of sunflowers. We have more Romas and then some more slicers. To finish out this row, I've got more bell peppers, and I'm like, this is literally the tallest I've ever had pepper plants get. And I know they can get bigger, but for me, that is just super exciting. So these are all bell peppers down through here. And then over here is that huge volunteer gourd that we saw, and turns out I think it's a pumpkin. We've got some pumpkins over there. This row here we have put to bed. I need to weed eat down the paths, but we've put to bed it, except for these beautiful sunflowers. I think this is where I'm going to put my kale and my spinach to start this fall's garden, probably sometime next week. On over is my corn, and while yes, the cow got in here a couple of times and I didn't think it would do much, the corn that we've gotten off of this has been delicious. And so while I'm bummed we didn't get more, easily covers the cost of our seeds and is something that's enjoyable for us right now to have fresh summer corn. That ear is itty bitty. That is super fun, and it's very tasty. Behind that, you can see this absolutely lovely row of sunflowers. Guys, these things are so tall. They're way taller than I am, and they're just beautiful, beautiful. At the end of my corn row is probably my favorite flowering produce in the garden is okra. I love the flower of okra. It is so beautiful. I think it's probably one of the prettiest in the garden. But my okra plants are just now starting to do wonderfully. I think the heat is also blessing them. And I'm just gonna let these go until the frost bites them, because we love okra, and where my germination rate wasn't huge, I'm gonna let them grow until the frost does them in. The last thing I'm gonna show you guys is over here, and it is our trellis. Our pumpkins are doing lovely. I'm gonna hopefully probably tie these up just so that the squash bugs don't knock them off. But we've gotten quite a few sugar pumpkins, even new ones coming on, that I'm really happy with these. And then last, and probably the largest and longest, is this side, which is, I have one little pumpkin down here. I have my trombonzino squash, and they are just getting gigantic. This one, I'm kind of just letting it go as big as I can get it since it's already turned green. This one I probably need to harvest and cure soon, but they're just massive. All right, to finish this out, I thought I'd bring us up here to the kids' snack garden. We have gotten a lot of food out of this little spot. It's been super fun. Lexi's ever-bearing strawberries have started putting on even more buds, and they are doing lovely. Their yellow beans have put on plenty of beans. DJ's cucumbers have kind of teetered out down here, but he's still selling cucumbers out of my bed. We replanted beans here for a later processing. We've got strawberries growing. We've got a second round of sugar snap peas planted and budding. And Spencer's tomatoes have exploded. He still has buds coming on, so we're gonna have cherry tomatoes for a while. So that's kind of where we're at this end of the season garden tour. We're still going to be harvesting out of that garden, but before I started to turn things over into some more fall plants, I wanted to bring you guys along. It is full of weeds and slowly finishing up plants, but it's still fun to go out, still providing plenty of food for our family, and so I wanted to bring you guys with us. Hope you guys are having an awesome summer. I know a lot of you have probably started back to school, so I hope you guys are gonna have a great school year, whether you're homeschooling or an actual like brick and mortar building. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining me on this